Hi, this is New Time on Silkwood TV channel. We introduce you with the most visible news and important events that happened throughout this week in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. More details on politics, economy, social and cultural life with opinions from the most recognizable experts of Kazakhstan and the world. I'm Baljan Samigulina and this is what you will see today. President Tokayev paid the first ever official visit to Serbia. What common ground do Astana and Belgrade share and what agreements did the parties achieve? Over $230 million to be invested by Hungarian entrepreneurs into Kazakhstan. What the funds will be aimed for? Kazakhstan started decentralizing power since joining the OECD Investment Committee. What else the organization influenced for? Gregory Lecombs, head of the Central Asia Unit, shared with the details. Well, let's begin with news from Belgrade. This week, President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, paid an official visit to Serbia. During high-level talks in the Balkan Republic's capital, the two leaders discussed the future of bilateral relations, focusing on political, economic and humanitarian cooperation. The talks culminated in the signing of 10 important agreements. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić shared his impressions of the meeting, revealing a personal moment when President Tokayev treated him to the Almaty upward apples. Vučić expressed his gratitude and highlighted how this visit would further strengthen the ties between Kazakhstan and Serbia. New Times following report will bring the full details on the first ever visit of the Kazakh president to Belgrade. The first ever official visit to Belgrade of Kazakh president kicked off with a ceremonial welcome in front of the Palace of Serbia, in line with diplomatic tradition. Following the honor guards report, the national anthems of both countries were played, and the two leaders introduced their delegations. In a private meeting, Presidents Tokayev and Vučić focused on enhancing economic cooperation, boosting trade and advancing joint projects. They emphasized progress in bilateral relations and committed to expanding ties in industry and agriculture. A major topic was the development of transport infrastructure, including direct flights between the capitals. During the visit, 10 agreements were signed in areas like defense, education, digitalization and telecommunications. In an inclusive interview with Silkwood TV channel, Kazakh authorities shared plans to train Serbian aerospace engineers and highlighted the country's growing interest in satellite systems and IT potential.
During this presidential visit, we are signing two documents with Serbian ministers. One is the Ministry of Information and Telecommunications, and the second one is the Ministry of Science. So Serbia is actively developing its IT sector and infrastructure. They have very well developed data center at the tier 4 level. Their IT exports is about 4 billion euros per year, and they're actively developing their IT hub, providing an opportunity for startups to develop.
After the high-level talks, the leaders addressed the media, underscoring the strategic importance of the visit. President Tokayev announced upcoming joint projects in transport, logistics and green energy. They also discussed expanding cooperation in agriculture, including veterinary expertise, organic farming and plant biotechnology. President Tokayev also emphasized the significance of cultural and humanitarian ties between Kazakhstan and Serbia, expressing the country's readiness to collaborate on educational and scientific and cultural initiatives. The two leaders also shared views on global and regional security.
Kazakhstan and Serbia established close relations at the international and regional levels. We share similar positions on many important issues. In the current complex geopolitical situation, we have reaffirmed our interest in further strengthening cooperation within multilateral frameworks.
Notably, a true example of friendship between the two states was Serbia's financial support during the floods in Kazakhstan this spring. President Tokayev expressed gratitude to the Serbian people for this act. The two leaders also agreed to meet next year when the President of Serbia will visit Astana. Baljan Samigulina, New Time. Notably, during President Tokayev's visit, Belgrade Tower was adorned with the sky blue flag of Kazakhstan. The building, which was only recently completed, now became a new symbol of Serbia's capital, as the 168-meter tower was opened just a month ago. Additionally, President Tokayev also met with Serbian Prime Minister Miloš Vučević. During their meeting, Kazakh President emphasized the importance of both governments working together to ensure the successful implementation of the agreements reached this week. In light of the unique global situation where all countries face growing pressure to renounce their independent foreign policies, Astana and Belgrade stand out as like-minded nations determined to uphold their sovereignty. This was stated by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Serbia, Marko Đurić, in an exclusive interview to Silkvi TV channel. Speaking of President Tokayev's official visit, Serbian diplomat emphasized the importance of unity among countries committed to pursuing independent paths.
Serbia and Kazakhstan share many of the same challenges when we speak about the international community, and I do believe that our countries need to stick together. We have agreed to establish regular political consultations on the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to implement the vision of our two presidents to create a strategic partnership between Serbia and Kazakhstan. This can greatly benefit both our economies, our global standing, our technological development, and we are very enthusiastic about all of this.
Bilateral ties between Astana and Belgrade have been growing for nearly 30 years, both in politics and trade. According to the State Revenue Committee, the trade turnover reached $91 million last year, while this year it has dropped by 10%, totaling almost 70 million. Kazakhstan mainly exports mineral fertilizers and polymers to Serbia, while importing cardboard, aluminium, glass products and metal structures. Notably, imports of paper, cotton and cement have decreased by 44%, while of cement products it almost stopped completely. Since 2021, a free trade agreement between the Eurasian Economic Union and Serbia has boosted business with 11 joint ventures and 47 Serbian investing companies in Kazakhstan, mainly in construction, automobile trade, scientific and technical activities. Some Serbian analysts argue that Belgrade should maintain its current foreign policy, welcoming President Tokayev's visit as a step beyond traditional partners, earlier having been on the radar of Belgrade's interests. Others, particularly liberals, think that Serbia should focus more on the EU and the West. Experts like Vuk Vukčanović from Belgrade Center for Security Policy highlight defense and industry and the Kosovo issue as key topics in Kazakh-Serbian relations. While there is also a potential to pave the way for cooperation in sectors like mining or energy, as Serbian entrepreneurs have previously operated in Kazakhstan's construction sector. What is the state of Serbia? What common ground do Astana and Belgrade share, considering that Serbia has a free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union, where Kazakhstan is a member? The upcoming report will explore the factors shaping Serbia's current foreign policy. There is a nation in Europe with a long history of war and ethnic conflict that for much of this century turned it into a state with multi-vector policy. That country is Serbia, a Slavic nation of nearly 7 million people living in the middle of ethnically, culturally and politically divided Western Balkans. Experts note that the specificity of Serbia's place on the world stage is determined by its strategic geopolitical position and its aspiration for regional dominance, where policy resilience stems from its clear national security goals and a balanced approach to global relations.
Now, Serbia likes to say that it has a four-pillar foreign policy of relying on four key powers in the international environment, which are US, European Union, Russia, and China. But this policy has been quite disturbed with the ongoing war in Ukraine, where we have had Serbia having to compromise on multiple fronts.
In 2023, despite various challenges, Serbia showed confidence in its economic policies, with national debt remaining at 75% of GDP. While this figure is better than any Balkan countries, it still lags behind EU nations. The country managed to stabilize its political situation, centralize power, tackle the pandemic, and position itself as a regional communications hub, attracting investment in major infrastructure projects. In this context, experts suggest that deepening ties with Kazakhstan would be beneficial, noting the Kazakhstan as a key region for strengthening strategic partnership.
Serbia is a small country in European and global affairs, but in terms of the Balkan affairs, it is the country with strategic geography, which essentially connects Balkan Peninsula with Central Europe. So that also puts the country in sort of in the center of some of the traffic and trading routes between the European continent and the wider Eurasian landmass. So possibly the Kazakhstan side might use this opportunity perhaps to strengthen collaboration in certain commercial areas, and it might even assist them in reaching out via Serbia through some other European markets.
Serbia, though not yet an EU member, is actively seeking to join the bloc. Its European journey began nearly 20 years ago with accession talks starting in 2014. Last year, public opinion in Serbia shifted, with the majority now supporting European integration for the first time in 2 years. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she was convinced Serbia would make further progress towards membership of the European Union in her upcoming mandate as she visited Belgrade in October.
As you see with the growth plan, we open already partially the door for the economic integration, but the whole discussion we have on rule of law, the judicial system, the policy, CFSP, for example, is a process to align with the European Union, and when the goal is reached, then there is the step towards accession to the European Union.
However, reforms are not only obstacles to Serbia's European integration. One of the main problems on the country's part to the EU is Kosovo. Serbia doesn't recognize the self-declared independence of Kosovo, while the EU supports the republic's independence and integration. Experts suggest Serbian President Vučić may eventually resolve this issue to facilitate EU accession. Thus, Kosovo remains a key topic in international negotiations, including upon bilateral relations with Kazakhstan, according to Vuk Vuksanović, senior researcher at the Belgrade Center for Security Policy.
The dispute over Kosovo's status continues to dominate Serbian foreign policy. So that means that any country that does not recognize independent Kosovo, including Kazakhstan, will be appreciated by Serbia, and Serbia will try to have some type of engagement vis-a-vis that country. I think that during this visit, a very, very pronounced element has been, of course, the attendance of Kazakhstan president at the military airport, where the products of Serbian defense industry have been displayed for him. And I think that this is an old part where Serbian foreign policy uses every opportunity to promote its growing defense industry in an attempt to find potentially new markets for itself.
In addition, Serbia recently had a chance to get closer to countries, with President Vučić recently signing a cooperation memorandum with the EU to launch Europe's largest lithium mine in western Serbia, which could meet 70% of Europe's lithium needs, reducing reliance on China. However, Serbia faces significant pressure, including from environmentalist opposition, especially after 2022 ban on lithium mining was overturned by the courts. The current administration proposes and supposes that project will meet EU environmental standards, though approval is still 2 years away. Serbia's accession is also uncertain, with Vučić stating it may not happen before 2028. However, Poland's upcoming EU presidency will prioritize enlargements with a focus on closer cooperation with Serbia, Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced earlier during his visit to Belgrade.
Szerzenie Unii Europejskiej
EU enlargement must include Serbia because there is no complete European Union without Serbia. It is a hard process. I know that there is a disappointment on both sides. Not everyone understands each other all the time. I'm here in Belgrade, and later I will be explaining that in Europe during our presidency. There are no misunderstandings or no problems that couldn't be solved in the Serbia-EU relations, and that would become the obstacles for the enlargement, including Serbia.
While seeking EU membership, Serbia continues to oppose sanctions on Russia, accusing concerning Europe of the country's geopolitical stance, alongside increasing rhetoric from Serbian nationalists, especially in the context of US policy possible shift towards Balkans under new Donald Trump leadership. Experts suggest that Serbia could have more favorable resolution to the Kosovo dispute, but balancing closer ties with both US and China would be its biggest challenge.
Mi imamo dobre odnose sa For those anticipating significant shifts in American attitude towards Serbia, I am sure that nothing like this will take place. I am optimistic that our bilateral relations with America will further improve, although I express gratitude to the previous administration for enhancing our relations over the past 4 years.
President Alexander Vučić has made it clear that Serbia's future lies with the European Union. Experts say that the country aims to transform into a thriving economy as it continues to pursue practical integration efforts. Its endeavors indeed are supported by Brussels and other stakeholders invested in the economic revival of the Balkans. Thus, Serbia's foreign policy is characterized by multilateral diplomacy, non-use of force, and the commitment to the peaceful resolution of conflicts. Experts say the question is how long the current administration will be able to maintain this policy. Valjan Samigulina, New Time. Now let's turn to the latest developments from Budapest, where President Tokayev paid a state visit just after Belgrade. During his visit, he was warmly received by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. As usually, the schedule was filled with important meetings, including high-level discussions and a session with leading Hungarian business figures. The central theme of the visit was strengthening partnership in the political, economic and humanitarian fields. More details on the visit are covered in the following report.
In Budapest, President of Kazakhstan was officially welcomed at Lion Square, located at the Royal Palace. The ceremony began with the sound of a military orchestra's fanfare as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban greeted Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Both national anthems were played, and the event was marked by a ceremonial march of honor guard, followed by the mounted cavalry. After the official ceremonies, President Tokayev held a working lunch with his Hungarian counterpart, President Tamás Sylyok, who was elected earlier this year. The focus was on strengthening strategic partnership, with both leaders discussing 30 years of successful cooperation and potential growth in areas like trade, energy, transportation, and renewable energy. Following the meeting, President Tokayev participated in a joint photo session and left a memorable entry in the guest book. On the second day of President Tokayev's state visit to Hungary, he was engaged in a series of official meetings and negotiations. The prospects for bilateral cooperation were first discussed in a smaller meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, followed by an expanded session. One of the key agreements reached was the creation of the Kazakhstan-Hungary Investment Fund. Later, President Tokayev shared more details during a briefing with journalists, emphasizing the potential development of the Trans-Caspian International Transport Corridor, one of the most important strategic trade routes.
Bugün Kazakhstan Temir Yolu Express LAC Holding
A memorandum of cooperation was signed between KTZ Express LAC Holding and Xi'an Free Trade Port Construction and Operation. This agreement will strengthen trade and transport links between our countries and serve as another step forward, enhancing economic ties in the region. It opens new opportunities for the development of infrastructure, logistics and international trade. Currently, 85% of land transit shipments between Asia and Europe pass through Kazakhstan. In the near future, the volume of goods transported along this route is expected to reach 10 million tons.
According to the president, the discussions also focused on increasing trade volumes and deepening investment cooperation. Hungarian companies have shown strong interest in Kazakhstan, as evidenced by the figures over the past 2 decades. $370 million has been invested into Kazakh economy. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban emphasized the importance of President Tokayev's visit in terms of expanding the strategic partnership between the two countries.
We discussed the prospects for expanding trade and economic ties, highlighted our shared history, and emphasized the strong bonds of friendship. The development of trade, the search for new energy resources, and the construction of international energy routes are areas of mutual interest for our countries. We agreed to make every effort to fully realize the potential of Hungarian-Kazakh economic cooperation.
As a result of the talks, the joint statement was signed, outlining both countries' commitment to strengthening their strategic partnership and implementing joint initiatives. In addition, 6 memorandums and agreements were signed between the official delegations covering cooperations in agriculture, infrastructure, and the banking sector, as shared exclusively to our channel by the Deputy Prime Minister Minister of National Economy of Kazakhstan, Nurlan Baybazarov, in a commentary.
Но мы больше всего, конечно, заинтересованы.
We are particularly interested in attracting investments into our country's manufacturing sector, so we can produce competitive goods for export, especially considering Hungary's vast experience. We also agreed to enhance cooperation in agriculture, industry, energy, transportation and digital development, and signed agreements totaling over $230 million.
In his final meeting, President Tokayev met with Laszlo Kövér, the Speaker of Hungary's National Assembly. The Kazakh leader highlighted the significance of interparliamentary relations and expressed confidence that strengthening these ties would boost trade, economic cooperation and cultural exchange between the two countries. Such a visit promises a bright future, fostering stronger ties and cooperation between the two countries. Жанерке Айтмагамбет, Baljan Samigulina, New Time.
Additionally, President Tokayev met with top Hungarian business leaders, resulting in the signing of 7 commercial agreements in agriculture, transport, infrastructure, digitalization and education. Discussions included the potential for Hungarian banks to open branches in Kazakhstan, as well as the resumption of air travel between the two nations. In total, Hungarian entrepreneurs plan to invest over $230 million in Kazakhstan. Notably, over the past 9 months, trade turnover between Astana and Budapest reached nearly $145 million, reaching a 4% increase from last year. Now both countries are aiming to boost this figure to $1 billion in the near future.
Hungary's investments in Kazakhstan have accumulated to 370 million, signifying vast prospects for future growth. We are proud to be home to more than 70 Hungarian companies, including major players like MOL Group and Gideon Richter. Their investments have been crucial in advancing our economic diversification and fostering sustainable development. We are now evaluating joint investment projects worth $540 million in the machine building, agriculture and logistics sectors, signaling just the start of our ambitious plans.
And now continuing with other news, since joining the OECD Investment Committee as an associated member in 2017, Kazakhstan has started decentralizing power, including introducing direct elections for local mayors, said Alida Tuyebekova, director of the Investment Facilitation Department of Kazakh Invest. Let me remind you that recently Kazakh representatives participated in the OECD Investment Week in Paris, where they discussed the new investment strategies in response to global changes. The focus was on the impact of industrial policies on foreign investments and sustainable development, as well as the OECD data on foreign direct investments quality and regulatory restrictions. Notably, Kazakhstan has been collaborating with the OECD since 2008 and recently became the 48th country to join the organization's Declaration on International Investment Multinational Enterprises.
Kazakhstan's accession to the OECD Investment Committee and the declaration reflects the country's commitment to creating a fair and transparent environment for international investments. In line with these recommendations, a series of political and economic reforms have been implemented, including the establishment of the Investment Ombudsman, strengthened parliamentary oversight of budget spending, the development of a hydrocarbon neutrality strategy by 2060, the creation of the National Contact Center for Responsible Business Practices, and the establishment of the Supreme Audit Chamber.
Kazakhstan's investment climate is becoming increasingly favorable, stated Greg Lecomte, head of the Central Asia unit of the OECD. According to him, one of the key drivers of this improvement has been the rapid digitalization of business processes. Earlier this year, during the Kazakhstan-Italy Investment Roundtable, the president tasked the government with aligning the country's business standards with those of the OECD. In an interview with New Time, Lecomte noted that while progress has been made, further improvements are needed, particularly in ensuring fair competition between state-owned enterprises and private firms.
So, Mr. Licon, thank you very much that you agreed to do this interview. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, if you don't mind, let me start with this question. We know that the OECD highlights the importance of facilitation of trade. So, in facilitation in Central Asia. So, my question is, what was Kazakhstan done recently to simplify trade procedures, and what other improvements would you recommend?
Thank you very much for the question. It's also a pleasure to be here. Latest findings of our research on the region suggest that Kazakhstan has made tremendous efforts and improvements in digitalizing trade procedures at the border. This is one. A second area of progress has been the consultation with the private sector and public-private dialogue when adjusting these regulations and the rules. And last and not least, transparency vis-à-vis the private sector again has improved, publicizing in advance updating of the rules, for instance, and the private sector appreciates this because transparency means more predictability. So this is in terms of progress. If I now think in terms of improvements going forward, what we suggest is to continue digitalize further the procedures, and two is something relevant for the region is to harmonize weighting and dimension parameters at the borders for the freight. Basically having the same standards when measuring or weighting the goods that cross the borders. This would be in a nutshell.
Let us talk a little bit about Middle Corridor. How can Middle Corridor connect better Europe and Central Asia? What key infrastructure or policy changes needs to be done to fully unlock its potential?
We've done some research again on realizing the potential of the Middle Corridor in the last years. What we suggest to the region is to work on 4 dimensions. One is to continue integrate in terms of regional trade to create demand for this corridor. So being a transit region will not be enough to enhance the demand for traffic of goods. So there should be really a process of regional integration, which is, I think, underway. A second direction is to improve trade procedures and trade facilitation, as we just discussed earlier. Third dimension is to upgrade infrastructures, maritime, road, rail, to mobilize also private investments, which is a challenge because it requires the right set of institutions and rules. And last and not least, and this we see also progress in the last years, is about coordinating better among countries. So coordination between agencies, but also coordinating at a more higher level and political level. So this is in a nutshell what we see as a priority for the region to realize the potential of the Middle Corridor.
As you know, nowadays Kazakhstan is trying to diversify its export beyond gas and oil. So my question is, what are the sectors are the most promising ones, and how can OECD's recommendation can help fully as well to support these initiatives?
If I knew, I would invest in these sectors and I would not be working at the OECD, because if I knew which sectors have a high potential, I would probably run a business and try to take advantage of this. But joke aside, what we see at the OECD is not to work necessarily on specific sector. We advise on the framework conditions, business climate, horizontal questions. And what comes to my mind for Kazakhstan is to continue improving the business climate for small and medium firms, and it has improved in the last years, notably via digitalization of procedures for opening businesses, for instance. Something more challenging, and I hope Kazakhstan will work on it, is to improving corporate governance of state-owned enterprises and making sure that there is what we call a level playing field between SOEs and private firms, so everyone is at the same level. And this ensures sound and safe competition among firms. These are towards the engines of economic diversification, making sure businesses can open, grow, maybe even die in a normal way. Now, if I give you my personal opinion on which sectors, I think Kazakhstan being a landlocked country, sectors where there is no distance penalty makes sense. For instance, IT, you can export IT services very easily from Kazakhstan. This can make sense. Another sector where Kazakhstan has experience is the metallurgical sector. You have raw minerals, critical raw minerals. You have metallurgy sector. So maybe thinking of niches in this area could make sense for the future. But this is my personal opinion. This is not OECD view on how Kazakhstan should diversify.
Do you see that the investment climate is getting more favorable for foreign investors in Kazakhstan? Maybe in a time scale like.
We've seen improvements in operational environment for firms. Basically, what I just said about SMEs, life has become easier for small and medium firms, and this is a good news. And one of the drivers of this was the digitalization of procedures. Opening a business has become easy. There have been fewer controls on businesses, notably after COVID or during COVID even. So all this goes into the right direction, but having said that, it's not yet completely perfect. I mentioned competition, I mentioned state-owned enterprises. These are topics that we hope to working on with the government of Kazakhstan in the years to come.
Rio de Janeiro hosted this year's G20 summit, centering its agenda on social inclusion, global governance for reform, and energy transitions. Brazil's President Lula da Silva opens the summit with the launch of a global alliance to combat poverty and hunger that more than 80 countries have agreed to back. The alliance he launched, coordinating global efforts to eradicate hunger and poverty, is backed by the African and European Unions, international organizations, and development banks. Additionally, President of the U.S. Joe Biden announced that the country pledged a $4 billion contribution to the World Bank's International Development Association Fund for the world's poorest countries.
As my friend Ajay tells you, the IDA is the first responding to the world's poorest countries. I encourage everyone around this table to increase their pledges in December. In addition, we have to mobilize private capital at scale. I'm proud of my country's work in this fund, including mobilizing $60 billion through the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment.
With the world on track for its warmest year on record, leaders also tried to shore up a global response to climate change. In a joint statement, they urged for rapidly and substantially increasing climate finance from billions to trillions from all sources to respond to global warming. Notably, Chinese President Xi Jinping also have been at the attendance exploring global development pathways and drew up a blueprint for global governance. In his speech, President Xi underscored that China is ready to work with all parties to build a just world of common development and outlined China's 8 actions for global development.
The Chinese often say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. China is ready to take steps together with all parties to build a just world of common development, leave poverty in the past, and turn our vision into reality. Proceeding from a new starting point, the G20 needs to build on its past achievements and continue to act as a force to improve global governance and move history forward.
A branch of Cardiff University will open in Astana following agreements between UK delegation and Kazakhstan's Ministry of Higher Education. The branch will offer a bachelor's program in education, engineering, IT and fields critical to Kazakhstan and the region, like geology, renewable energy and mining. The first students will begin classes in September next year. These details were shared in an interview with New Time by Michael James German, a member of the House of Lords. According to him, research activity will be a key aspect of the branch work. To learn more details, watch the interview segment right now. Lord German, thank you very much for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you, and I'm very glad to welcome you with wonderful news that Cardiff University, a leading research university in the UK, has opened its branch in Astana. And could you please share with the details how many courses and what disciplines will be taught here, please?
Well, I think we're at the first stage 1, and of course the one thing to say is that Cardiff University is a member of the Russell Group of Universities, which is like the Ivy League group in the United States. It's a top level of a university in the United Kingdom. And coming here means that it's a big step for them, and also I think it's very important for Kazakhstan, because what it will be able to offer is degrees and support at the very highest level of our studies. And it joins the ambition, I think, of Kazakhstan to have big and good universities here to increase the knowledge base and the skills of the people of this wonderful country.
It is known now that the bachelor degree will start launching here in Kazakhstan starting from next September. What about the courses for master degrees, and what exactly disciplines will be taught?
Well, the university offers a huge range.
Yeah.
I mean, it has within its context a university medical school, so that there is training of doctors and all medical professions. It has engineering, it has science, it has bioscience, it has technology, it has commercial courses, and arts and culture. All of those things are in this great big university, and they will pace out and lay out the rule they want. But I know that Cardiff University is keen to do research here and to have research capability, because it's fundamentally a research university.
Yeah, right.
It teaches as well, but research is an important part of its work. So starting with offering undergraduate courses for students here, and then they are very hopeful they can build out to having research capability soon.
Yeah, and I wanted to know why did Cardiff University choose Kazakhstan for its branch to open in first time in the Central Asian region and in the CIS in general?
Well, it's an interesting little story, but basically the colleagues of mine were here and they understood that there were people from Scotland who were here, people from England were here, but there was nobody from Wales. So I was asked, because I used to represent parts of Wales, and Wales, Cardiff is my home city where I was born. And so I said, well, you must look at Cardiff, because they are a fantastic university and they are obviously the sort of people that Kazakhstan would need. So I made the introduction to them of Kazakhstan, and I met Minister Nurbek, who obviously was instrumental in building the relationship, and we together decided to approach Cardiff, and Cardiff said, well, this is very interesting, let's talk. So they came together and they had many meetings and come here beforehand, and the result is that now we've got to have agreement to start and open the courses from next year, and the marketing for those courses I'm sure will start very soon indeed.
Yeah, and I would like to ask for Kazakh students, will it be based on scholarship to study in Cardiff University in Astana, or on what basis?
There are going to be Kazakh scholarships available. That's been part of the discussion, and Minister Nurbek has confirmed that the Kazakh government will support students from Kazakhstan to study with Cardiff University here in Astana, and that will be helped by these large range of scholarships that will happen. Over time, of course, when you get to research and master's degrees, then of course there will be obviously a rethink about how all that might work. But this opportunity is going to be available.
Yeah, you also mentioned that Cardiff University is particularly interested in research to do in Kazakhstan. In what exactly fields maybe Kazakhstan is now, for example, the Kazakh started to be taught in Oxford University as part of Turkic studies. Maybe there's also a field which is being interested for Cardiff University researchers and professors.
Well, I think what Cardiff will do is look at the needs of this country. I mean, obviously, the economic needs, the economic development. There are scientific needs, where development of scientific courses, biomedical science, all these issues that are about the future for Kazakhstan, and that discussion will obviously go on, but the demand will be, I think, driven by the needs of Kazakhstan as to what you think in this country needs to be improved to create a better world for all people who live here.
Thank you very much, Lord Joman, for joining us.
Thank you.
That's it for today. All the main news about Kazakhstan and Central Asia you can find here. More special projects about our country you can also watch on Silk Road TV channel. So stay tuned and see you next week.